AITA for letting my wife roast my parents for telling her to date my brother? This weekend, my parents invited my wife and me to a special dinner with other family members to celebrate their 30th wedding anniversary. Anyone would normally go to their parents' wedding anniversary because it is a family gathering, but honestly, I have mixed feelings about it. The main reason I am hesitating is because of Connor. You see, Connor is my younger brother, and we have never been very close. Even though we are only 2 years apart, we do not have a strong bond. A lot of things stem from how he feels about me. He has built up a lot of resentment, and it has been like that since we were kids. When we were younger, our parents were really strict, especially our dad. He spent years in the army, and that mindset clearly reflected in the way he raised us. He was constantly pushing us to compete against each other. It did not matter what it was, rushing to catch the school bus in the morning or trying to outdo each other in chores. Everything was a competition between the two of us. It was not just about doing your best. You had to do better than your brother. At first, I do not think the competition between Connor and me was too bad. It might have even been healthy in the beginning. We were just kids, and a little rivalry is normal. But over time, things started to change. My brother started falling behind, especially in school. I was always good at school. I got good grades. I aced my tests and brought home report cards my parents could be proud of. Unfortunately, that only made things worse for Connor. Because I was doing well, my dad constantly compared him to me. And when Connor did not measure up, he was severely punished. There were nights when he would not let him have dinner, and other times he made him stand in a corner for hours until his legs gave out. I could see how much it hurt him, not only physically, but also emotionally. Dad used me as an example all the time. "Look at your brother," he would say. "Why can you not be like him?" He even forced me to tutor Connor, thinking that if I helped him study, his grades would improve. I did not mind helping him. I even wanted to. But it was hard to help him when we were both under so much pressure from our dad. The truth is, Connor did not like studying. It just was not his thing. He was a more playful kid who liked being outside, running around, and using his imagination. Sitting down with a book did not appeal to him, no matter how hard we tried to force him. As the years went by, it became increasingly obvious that the constant comparisons and pressure had taken a serious toll on Connor. He started to hate me, and honestly, I can understand why. He felt like he was always lagging behind, always failing, no matter how hard he tried. But I also did not like being the center of our dad's attention. I hated it too. I did not just feel bad for Connor. I lived with my own anxiety of never being good enough in my dad's eyes, of failing a test, or not meeting his expectations. I also talked to my dad about Connor and what I was seeing, but that only got me punished too. Then right before I left for college, something happened, and it turned our whole family upside down. Connor had a serious situation where he overdosed on sleeping pills in a moment of deep distress. Fortunately, our parents found him in time and rushed him to the hospital. The doctors were able to save him, but that moment changed everything. It was as if someone had finally taken the blindfold off my parents' eyes, especially my dad's. For the first time, they saw how much Connor was suffering, how much immense pain he had been hiding for years. It took something that serious, something that could have ended in tragedy for them to finally realize the damage they had caused him all this time. After the incident, things really changed at home. My parents started going to therapy sessions with Connor to try to understand what he was going through. Since then, they treat him as if he were made of porcelain, as if every wrong word or a little pressure could break him. Over the years, I have also apologized to my brother more than once. I told him how sorry I was for not being more aware, for not standing up for him more when we were kids. I tried to fix things at least between the two of us. But even today, years later, I feel like our parents still treat him like a child. They try to make up for all the past wrongs, and I do not think that is healthy either. After high school, when our dad wanted Connor to go to college, my brother threatened to harm himself again. He said he could not live away from home and that he did not need a degree. So, he never went to college. Without a degree and without even good grades in high school, Connor had a hard time keeping a steady, well-paying job. Even when he manages to land a job, he struggles to keep it, either because he misses work too often or because he argues with his coworkers. He always ends up getting fired. It is like a repeating cycle. My brother still lives with our parents in their suburban home, pays no rent, and depends entirely on them for everything. Food, bills, daily expenses, everything. Just to be clear, my brother has no diagnosed mental disorder to this day. He occasionally goes to the therapist, and besides the depression he had back then, he is fine now. He is functional. He no longer struggles like he used to. In fact, he has a group of friends he hangs out with. They mostly party. It is not the healthiest group, but at least he is not completely reclusive. The only problem is that he does all this with our parents' money, and I think that is what frustrates me the most. My parents never put any pressure on him, never challenge him, never ask him to be responsible. They are afraid, and I understand it. They are afraid of pushing him too far, afraid he might do something drastic again. And he knows it. He knows exactly how to play with that fear. Sometimes, I really feel like he takes advantage of it. So, when they started asking me to send money to help them with their daily expenses, I had to say no. I know they are retired now and no longer have the same income as before. And since Connor contributes to nothing, it is obvious their savings will not last long. But I cannot send money every month while my brother lives as if he has no responsibilities. Besides, there have been other situations I will get back to that make it hard to give them money. Now, my wife knows my family's entire history. She cannot stand my brother, and it is not just because he is an irresponsible son to my parents, but also because he has made her extremely uncomfortable on several occasions. You see, Connor constantly flirts with my wife in ways that cross the line. From the day he met her, he has always been overly affectionate, tries to get close to her, and even makes completely inappropriate comments. He does this under the guise of being playful or friendly. And when I call him out on it, he deflects, laughs, and acts like it is just a joke. What makes all of this even worse is how my parents react. This is one of the situations I was talking about earlier. They do not see it for what it really is. Instead of putting Connor in his place or supporting me, they brush it off. They say it is just an innocent crush, as if he were a little kid. Sometimes they even make remarks that almost make it seem like they subtly encourage it. For example, when my wife first met my parents, back when she was still just my girlfriend, we were all sitting together chatting. Suddenly, my mom said to my partner something like, "You are so funny. You know, you would actually be much better with my other son, Connor. You have the same kind of humor." Then my dad chimed in telling my wife something like, "Yes, Connor is really funny. You would probably have more fun with someone like him." Since we were in shock, my wife and I thought they were joking, and we tried to laugh it off. But over the years, my parents have kept bringing up the idea that my wife would have been a better choice for my brother. It is like a recurring theme they never get tired of. Over and over, they have said things like, "She is so much more like Connor," or they make comments about how my wife and Connor have similar personalities as if that meant she picked the wrong brother. Even on our wedding day, right before the ceremony, my mom pulled my wife aside and asked her, "Are you sure you want to marry him?" She said it as if she were offering her a last chance to back out, as if she hoped my wife would change her mind and leave. Can you imagine how destructive it is to hear that on your wedding day? I got into a huge argument with my parents about it and cut ties at the time. But over time, they apologized, promising they would never talk about my wife that way again. And yet, for my brother's next birthday, they went out of their way to make my wife pose next to him for pictures and videos. My wife simply said no, and we left early before the cake was even cut. We realized my parents would not change and that this kind of situation would happen over and over again. After that, my mom tried to justify things by saying my brother had never had a girlfriend. So, he just had a little crush on my wife because she is pretty and maybe being close to her would make him want to improve himself and find someone like her. My dad is no better. He said things like, "What is the harm in standing next to him for a picture if it makes your brother happy?" We stopped going to all family events where my brother was present. No more birthdays, no more gatherings, nothing at all. We completely distanced ourselves. I stopped visiting my parents too, and so did my wife. Yet, my mom insists we come this time because she invited all my cousins and the extended family, and she does not want me to miss it because people might ask questions. But I already know what is going to happen because my brother will be there and neither of us wants to go, especially not my wife. Because even though it bothers me, I would have never married her if I thought she could fall in love with that loser. What really bothers me is the pure disrespect towards me. But my wife feels uncomfortable. So, we prioritize her decision. I would not mind seeing distant relatives I have not seen in a long time, but none of this is worth it. I am not making this post to ask if we should go or not, but just to talk about my family and get all this out of my head, because this invitation made me think about my childhood again. Update 1. First, I want to say thank you to everyone who commented on my post. With all the posts out there, I thought no one would read mine. My wife told me something after thinking about my parents' invitation, and it really stuck with me. She thinks that if we do not go, my parents will probably make up an excuse for our absence, and it will be something that makes me look like the bad guy. She thinks we should go, and if my brother starts flirting again, it would be the perfect opportunity to put them all in their place in front of everyone. That way, they would not have any excuse to later tell another version of the facts to our relatives. I am not saying my wife's plan is bad. Actually, it is pretty solid, but I am still thinking about it, because it could also go very wrong. Update 2. Well, we decided to go to my parents' anniversary, and honestly, I think the outcome was pretty positive overall. At the event, my parents were clearly thrilled to see me. My mom hugged me tight and told me she did not really think I would come and that she was so happy I was there. I just nodded and smiled. Everything was going relatively well until dinner. We were all sitting around the table at their suburban house, chatting and exchanging pleasantries. Then one of my aunts mentioned somewhat randomly that all the cousins were either married or in a relationship, except my brother Connor. She laughed a little and half-jokingly asked why he was still single and if he was seeing anyone he might want to marry soon. My brother just smiled shyly and blushed as if he was trying to hide something. Then one of the cousins jokingly blurted out, "Come on, Connor. Confess. You are hiding someone." That is when my mom, without hesitating for a second, said out loud, "Huh, I do not know if he has a girlfriend, but he has a huge crush on his brother's wife." Then she pointed at my wife and laughed like a 5-year-old in love with her teacher. My dad laughed even louder. I looked her dead in the eye, but she did not even notice. She was too busy laughing and chatting with my aunt, telling her how my brother had been fascinated by my wife for years. And as if that was not enough, my aunt turned to my wife and asked loudly and thoughtlessly, "You wouldn't happen to have a sister or a cousin that Connor could maybe date?" And some of the guests actually laughed. My brother just stood there blushing with a little smile. He did not try to stop my parents, did not try to change the subject. He just stood there, soaking up the attention as if it was a compliment. I could feel the anger rising inside me, but I stayed calm because we had prepared for this. I was going to speak up, and I was going to speak loud enough for everyone to hear. I was not going to wait until the next day to get a text from a half-deaf cousin asking why I had humiliated my parents. I turned to my mom and said, "How dare you talk about my wife like that?" The whole table went quiet, and everyone started listening. I said, "You both promised me you would never cross that line again. You swore to respect our boundaries and stop putting us in uncomfortable situations. But here we are again. You are laughing because my brother has a crush on my wife. You think it is funny because you are as foolish as he is." Then I turned to the whole table, my cousins, my aunts, and my uncles, and I said, "Tell me, how many of you think it is normal to openly say you have a crush on your own brother's partner and have the whole family laugh about it like it is a comedy? Do you really think that is normal?" Suddenly, no one had an answer anymore. So, I turned to my brother and let it all out. "You have been acting inappropriately with my wife for years. You flirt with her every time we are together. You sent her text messages in the middle of the night, even though she never replied and blocked you. You try to stick close to her, you touch her when she is clearly uncomfortable, and you act like it is a joke." My brother's face instantly dropped. I looked around the table and continued, "And all of you think this is funny? You really think it is acceptable for a man to act like this with his brother's wife?" I turned to my parents and said, "And you too. How many times have you made comments about how my wife and Connor would make a cute couple? You have been doing this for years. You even said things like that on our wedding day. Do you realize how wrong that is, how incredibly disrespectful it is? Not just to me, but to my wife too." Everyone remained silent. I was so mad at my aunt too for playing along with my mom's joke. So, I looked her straight in the eye and asked her, "Would you say those kinds of things about your own son's partner? Would you tell your daughter-in-law she would be better off with someone else in the family? Would you let your son act like that with someone else's wife?" She looked shocked, then slowly shook her head. "Exactly. That is what I thought. So, why is it acceptable when it is my parents doing it to me?" My dad looked like he was about to explode, his face red and his fists clenched on the table, but I told him, "Do not say anything. Do not even try. I think Mom and your brother have great chemistry. Maybe they should be together too." Nothing more, just a little comment still in a joking tone. Right. At that point, he turned pale. My mom, on the other hand, started to panic. She tried to laugh with a shaky voice, saying, "I did not mean any harm. Come on, it is not that big of a deal. It is just a little innocent crush. We have always joked about this regarding your wife and Connor. I am sorry, but it was really funny and I did not mean to offend anyone." That is when my wife, who had also prepared her comeback, spoke to my mom. "Oh, I understand now. Since everything is a joke to you, I guess having that affair with the neighbor years ago was just for fun too. No, I think we should all laugh. Come on, everyone, laugh," she said, gesturing to encourage the others to laugh. My mom froze, her eyes wide. My wife continued, I guess you had a little innocent crush on the neighbor too. And I guess when you decided to get involved with him, it did not mean anything. It was just for fun, right?" What my wife was saying was entirely true. It was an ugly little secret my parents had hidden for years. A long time ago, my mom had an affair with the neighbor, and when he found out, she begged him not to leave her. He stayed only because of me and my brother. Over time, he seemed to have forgiven her, or at least moved on. But my wife knew the truth because I had told her. She had kept it to herself for many years. But before going to this dinner, she asked me if she could use it to defend herself, and I told her, "You have free rein. Use all the ammunition you want." My mom snapped out of her shock and immediately started screaming at my wife. She was not joking around anymore. She yelled that my wife had no right to bring that up and that she had crossed the line. My dad also defended my mom, saying my wife was disrespectful and had stooped really low. But I defended my wife in turn and said, "You crossed the line the day you made my wife the subject of your twisted jokes, the day you kept defending Connor as if he were a harmless child when he has been making my wife uncomfortable for years. It is frankly concerning that a grown man like Connor has a crush on his sister-in-law. He is not a child. He is a half-functional adult who could really use a wake-up call. I do not know, maybe a strong push to make him stand on his own 2 feet." My mom started crying in front of everyone, trying to get sympathy, playing the victim because I was now the bad son, the one who was yelling and dropping some truths. But people were still in shock over what I had said, especially the fact that my mom had been unfaithful to my dad. Finally, Connor spoke up just to yell at me. "You always have to make everything about you." I replied to him, "None of this would be about me or my wife if you guys had not done it from the start. You stood there like a seal waiting for its fish while Mom announced your crush on my wife as a joke. You did not say anything to stop her. You blushed like a middle schooler watching the quarterback walk down the hall. The only thing missing was you playing with your hair. You are mad at me? Too bad. Your anger means nothing to me." He said, "Oh, come on. You always play the victim. No one said anything that bad." While my parents and Connor kept yelling and shifting the blame, my wife and I decided to leave. The yelling was not going to stop anytime soon, and we had already said everything we had to say. Why stay any longer? My parents and my brother were going to keep clinging to their version while the rest of the family had heard everything they needed to hear. I just shut them up for a moment to say, "We are done. Do not contact us again until you grow up and are ready to take responsibility. And if that never happens, do not call us when one of you dies either." And that was it. Most of the family members started sending us messages of support. Even my aunt apologized for not speaking up when my mom started talking to her. In the end, it went better than I thought it would. I have to admit, my wife was right. It felt good to rip the Band-Aid off all at once. Update 3. Since then, everything has been strangely quiet. I do not know. I was expecting more calls from my parents. There were just a few that went straight to voicemail. But from what I know, they are so humiliated that they do not want to say anything for fear of making things worse. I listened to their messages, and they are surprisingly calm considering how we left things the other night. I get it. They are afraid we might blow up again and drop even more truths. But I think we have said everything. We did not hold back. Yes, we could have phrased things differently, but it just came out like that in the moment. For example, my wife had planned to say that my brother is a loser she would never consider as a partner. But in the heat of the moment, she forgot and focused on the main thing, talking about my mom's infidelity. Looking back, I think this dinner was a good thing. We had to stop at a fast food place afterward because we had hardly eaten anything all evening, but we had a great time talking about it over a burger and fries. Update 4. It has been almost 3 months since my last update, and several things are worth mentioning. First of all, Despite cutting off all contact with my brother and giving multiple warnings, Connor kept sending weird, unsolicited love letters to my wife. Even after our threats to call the police, it did not stop him at all. So we had to follow through on our threats. I will get back to that in a moment. Next, about a month ago, my wife and I got some incredible news. We are expecting a baby. We were overjoyed and shared the announcement on social media. That turned out to be a big mistake because this week, things took a terrifying turn. My wife came home from work and was shocked to find Connor sitting on our front porch waiting for her. He stood up as soon as he saw her. She immediately felt unsafe. So, she ran to her car and sped off while he ran after her, begging her to stay and talk to him. I cannot even imagine the panic she must have felt in that moment. She called me and I rushed home. We both called the police immediately, and since we had already filed a police report about those unwanted letters, it was not hard to have him taken into custody for a few days. That lasted until my parents paid his bail, but he still has to go to trial. Our lawyer had also filed a request for a restraining order against him, but it had not been approved yet when he showed up at our house. We also talked with our lawyer to find out how much a criminal trial against my brother could cost. Even though we can only press charges and testify, we asked how much it could amount to in fees. He told us that if my parents paid for a lawyer, it could cost between $20,000 and $40,000, or even more if they hired a high-end lawyer. That brought us some relief because even if Connor did not face heavy consequences, at least our parents are paying dearly to defend him. It might sound harsh, but if Connor is still in his delusional state after everything that happened at the dinner and our parents keep turning a blind eye, then justice, or at least the cost of justice, will take care of it. These things take time, but I will be back with more news when it happens. Update 5. It has been a while, we are parents now. But as promised, I am back with much more to tell than expected. During all this time, to answer a few questions I was asked, no, we were never really scared. Because shortly after the restraining order was finally granted, which happened not long after the previous incident, for obvious reasons, Connor tried once again to approach my wife and violated his bail conditions. So my parents lost the bail money. That is the first point. Secondly, Connor also lost his trial. I do not know exactly how much my parents spent, but I know it was not a public defender. They paid for a private attorney. It did not do them much good because Connor ended up getting a 6-month prison sentence, including time served in pretrial detention. He was also court-ordered to go to therapy for as long as necessary. Thirdly, my parents got divorced. You know, with some animals like puppies, their testicles have not descended yet. Then one day they do, and it is like a rite of passage into adulthood. They become more territorial, start acting on their instincts. Well, it seems my dad finally had his surge of manhood, a scientific miracle at his age, and he decided to divorce my mom. Apparently, the shame of everyone knowing she had been unfaithful was too hard to bear. My mom now has custody of Connor. Not legally since he is not a minor, but she took him under her wing. They both had to get jobs again because between Connor's legal fees and the divorce, they have no savings left. Imagine if I had listened to those who said I had already done enough at the dinner or that pressing charges against Connor was excessive. I disagree. Fourthly, the rest of the family started distancing themselves from them. They showed it by refusing to lend money during the trial or by deleting them from social media. Fifthly, social media played a huge role in this. Not because of what we posted, but let us just say everyone in town now knows exactly who my parents and Connor are. That made it extremely difficult to rent a place after losing their house because of the trial and the divorce. My dad moved to another state while my mom could only move a few towns over since the court forbade Connor from leaving the state. Sixthly, not much except that life is much happier. Now, Connor might seem dangerous because he is still around, but we have a restraining order and he now has a criminal record. Even he is not stupid enough to risk going back to prison. Seventhly, a simple thank you to all of you, and I send you my best regards while continuing to enjoy my new life as a father. Yeah, comment. I really connected with this story because it shows how important it is to value your own peace. Protecting your boundaries helps you build stronger and healthier connections. Standing up for yourself and those you love is an act of true self-respect. Taking responsibility for your happiness can transform your entire life. Being kind to yourself first opens the door to genuine kindness toward others. Healing old family wounds takes courage, but it leads to real freedom. You have the power to choose relationships that support your well-being. Take a moment today to reflect on where you might need firmer boundaries. Prioritizing your mental health is one of the most loving things you can do. Thanks for being here with me, and I hope this encourages you to create more calm and joy in your own story. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.